Yeah.
We know we need to get to qualified versus eligible. Does anyone have any proposed changes to the definitions or anything like this? We can come back, but I just want to kind of work through that. You all know this is coming, so still go back. What about subject matter? Any proposed changes to add to the institutions?
So looking under the amendments, plan, yeah. I'm sorry, was item J added last time, 10 years ago? There'd be a notation right there, wouldn't there? Yes.
But the whole term is changed.
I mean, wasn't the wall, well, there was a referendum about Walmart, and that would be zoning. So that's been changed within my life, adult life.
I think the concern on that one is the process for zoning changes. It's set forth in the state code. You have to go through planning and zoning commission, you have to have a public hearing. There's a supermajority requirement, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the concern about. I mean, I think we'd have a real reaction.
I love it. I see it's not.
Yeah. I don't remember the line. The whole section was changed a lot.
Yeah. But you have that red line version that shows you the actual changes that were made
Right.
10 years ago.
Are you concerned about that?
Well, I just know that that's a,
People don't like it.
yeah.
Yeah, people don't like it. But I think that's why it's there, to make it clear, because it's much better than forcing some other city employees to say, well, how are we going to do that when the state code says we've got to follow all these different regulations in order to adopt planning and zoning. It's the same, the rules for planning and zoning are pretty much identical for counties and cities. They all set out. So, I just think it's one of those things that kind of has to be off limits, at least in that process. And there are, people do have the right to get a petition, you can get the right number of signatures from the right people, you can vote, so you can participate in that process.
I have a question about is public improvement, is it really limited to building construction work, is it not roads or anything else strictly construction?
Then public improvement is kind of a term of art. It's construction projects, building projects.
I understand that, and it says it means any building or construction work, and I believe that was construction work, is that like roads as well? Okay.
So the other thing that we talked about that we hadn't come to a conclusion about is this 2 years. That both the referendum and initiative is kind of good for 2 years, and it's such an extensive process, no matter what changes we make to things. Well, unless we go to the 10 signatures. And it's really hard to go through this process. It's an extended process and not taken lightly. And then either the council can change it in 2 years, or someone can come back in with that referendum again, or an initiative again in 2 years. And we talked about changing that to something longer. Because communities, council can deconstruct what the community has built, and community members can come in and hammer the community with the same initiative again and again. So even though it might lose. So 2 years seems like such a short amount of time. And so we talked about another, potentially 4 years. We're trying to figure out what that sweet spot was. Not too long. We don't want it to be too long because things do change. And to what the community needs or what the community will accept or not accept. And at one point, I put out 4 years just because it's a council term, so that seems like the community has said, 4 years is an amount of time that's reasonable.
Yeah, I suspect the reasonableness of that is going to depend on where you end up on a particular issue, right? I mean, if you just barely get your signatures and then council that puts it on for a vote and your vote barely loses, 4 years is going to seem like a long time. You really want to get something pushed forward. Yet, if you quote unquote win that election, or your position wins that election, 4 years sounds just great. You don't have to deal with it again. I understand it seems like a short period of time sometimes, but I bet for a lot of folks that want to get something done, 2 years maybe seems like a long time if they're not successful. Or maybe you don't get your signatures. I guess if you don't get your signatures,
You can
change
try
it.
again.
Yeah, that's not quite the same thing.
The other piece is, it's a long time to make a change if you truly have unintended consequences that show up. Well, take the drinking as a potential, that you change it to 18 and all at once you're, folks are noticing the stats going up and up and up on drunk driving and number of fender benders and all those kinds of things. And so people start weighing it, which way is it better to keep it at 21 versus 18, so that we don't have this in our city of the consequence of young drivers. So I would want to have, if it moved to 18, for instance, and I saw all these consequences, I would choose to have the community rethink it in 2 years rather than 4 years.
I do share the concerns that but those are functions of representative democracy. There are going to have laws that prefer, and if that's the philosophy, then why don't we shorten it? People shouldn't have to wait 2 years to get another look at something. Why don't we make it 6 months? So those are always issues that are going to exist in representative democracy. I tend to side with Karen. 2 years is too short, largely because it takes 6 months if a citizen wants to do an issue or a referendum. It takes them 6 months of work to get that in place, right? And so then you're going to tell them that the whole span of what they worked for is only good for 2 years. I think 4 is definitely the upper limit of what we want to do. We might be in a sweet spot, but I think 2 is too short.
Do we have any history of the council undoing what's been done in 2 years?
We do have red light cameras. They accepted that with the understanding that they would probably relook at it again when it expired here in a few months.
Right, not quite the same though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we'll do that. Given what the state, the message the state has with the issue, what's going to happen.
And if we put 3 years, then that would necessarily make it a special election.
Shakes out.
Not necessarily, it wouldn't come up with,
Not necessarily. It doesn't always completely get it.
I think it's more likely that, well, especially with the 21 thing, that people take advantage of the 2 years
Also, I'm concerned about
rather
because
than, I'm not recalling instances of council change.
Just they have the power to after that public
Right.
process.
But I think the governor is correct, though. I think people do take advantage of the 2 years.
And if we do get into a situation where it is special elections, it is something like 21 where there appears to be broad community support, but also an active opposition, they can keep bringing it up, and potentially money spent on special elections that we don't even have in for 2 years.
What would be a 60?
Kind of a rule of thumb, takes a year to approve, takes a year to design it, and it takes a year to build it. So you're 3 years from approval. With the most, virtually all of those projects, for the time to run through the council.
But those can't be subject, right? Public improvements can't be subject of.
Yes, I think we're
So
okay on
that's-
that.
Mhm.
On that. Yep.
So for the unintended consequences piece of it, I really do hear that. But I don't know that 2 years is long enough to understand the unintended consequences. Because you need at least 3 data points to show a trend. So it takes by the time something is implemented and it can go through the process and then get some experience with it, to get some reality data. I don't know that we really understand the unintended consequences in 2 years. With a lot of things, there's a lag time that, yeah, for that example, we can go up, but then other kinds of measures are in place for education, and then it starts to go down again. So that would be my only caution, that I would agree with the argument, but still say that it won't really see those unintended consequences.
Yeah, but perhaps if we really don't see the changes, people won't sign it. But it could go forward after the 2-year time, and then people won't be interested in signing because they'll say, I haven't seen anything happen up or down all the way back down. So maybe it wouldn't go through.
The 21 only, I mean, no matter what side you were on, my impression, just being a resident, is that like we voted on that a lot. I mean, I feel like it happened like all, yes, right, like, I was like, didn't we just talk about this? Right. So I didn't.
It's a good, sorry, 21's a good example. After 2 years, it appeared to be working, but after longer than 2 years, it appeared to be working even more. And I think that it would have been, had more approval if there'd been a longer span.
Right.
I'm not sure how I come down on whether 2, 3, and 4 is the sweet spot. I do think it's a practical matter based on what we've seen, that the impact it's going to have is on people who are trying to get stuff. Unless something changes in the way things operate. But I think most likely the impact it's going to have, those are the folks who've used that 2-year provision, who come and unsuccessful, or try again. And I'm not saying I have a problem with that. It matches what the charter says, so if it does, you can do it. But I just don't know. I haven't seen, I guess I'd be interested if the council, if there's any history of the council sort of undoing what's been done. The only thing I can think of is it the first, did you describe the First Avenue?
The First Avenue, I was thinking about that.
But that was specifically, wasn't there sort of an exploding deadline in that initiative to begin with, where it was something like, council won't open this for so long or until something else is done? I can't remember.
I think I maybe.
On the resubmission of the measure, how could it be considered if a initiative receives so many percentage, receives so many votes in favor of, I don't know what that number might be, if it's 35%, 40%, I don't know, whatever, but if it's something tied to, for those who, if there's a position that maybe could be brought sooner than 2 years, if the whole point is why it's a long time to wait, if can you bring it back earlier, a certain number of votes were cast? I don't know.
I guess just reaction. I'm not super interested in that just because we don't have consistent voting in those elections. So, one vote might be way up because of a different issue, and you might get closer, and then another vote might be way down and the numbers are skewed. I guess I'm just more of a, I like the line being clear, you know, there's one bar, you either get over it or you do not.
Yeah, I guess you could say the same thing. I mean, if an initiative passes, if it passed because this particular election brought out more or less votes. I'm not advocating hard for change. I'm simply proposing if it really needs to be modified, is that a feasible way to do it?
And do people, I'm sort of going back and forth in my own head, does the 2, 3, 4, does that make a difference depending on what we do with qualified versus eligible? I don't know if it should, I'm just sort of thinking, you know, there's a lot of stuff tied together.
I mean, that's sort of where I was going in my head as well, and you know, I mean, if we do collapse this distinction between eligible and qualified, you know, it's the same, that, you know, maybe we do kind of say higher standards for, you know, our number of signatures or how long this is, you know, I mean, then we're sort of opening up the.
How long the issue's closed?
Right, yeah. I don't know if I mean, you know, I don't know if I agree with what I'm saying, but does that make a difference? I don't know, maybe, you know.
Well, we're thinking it would become easier to get a petition full if you collapse
Yeah.
qualified and eligible, right? So that we said,
But it would, yeah.
it's easier to do and it's every 2 years, they could be, right, a lot of business, right?
So maybe we need to hear Eleanor's reaction to the ACLU's attorneys.
I just want to throw out before we get that, if I might, the number of cities in Iowa, I would like to know how many of them have initiative and referendum as a possibility for their citizens, number one. Number two.
One other than us.
One other, okay. So that tells me that a lot of cities don't want to get into all of this stuff. And my,
home rules, charter said.
yeah, and what I'm thinking is that when the charter was written, they gave this privilege to the home rule of their city. And they didn't want to make it so easy to achieve that they would have this influx of many, many, many coming around.
I remember that 2,500 number was discussed quite extensively at the very beginning, and 70, whatever. And as we look at the trends over the last several decades, it's been very, very rare when the required number is ever over 25, never higher than 2650, is that in my memory? So that number seems to have, I mean, it's quite impressive, really, with that. They went with that, and then it seems to be about near that percentage is back.
I want to just clarify, Andy, we stop certifying once that threshold is met. So there may be more signatures
Sure.
submitted,
Sure.
but we didn't bother
Right.
certifying because it wasn't
But I
necessary.
mean, that's required.
Yeah, right.
Based on what. Well, here's what, we're at 8:40, almost 8:45. We've got some public comment, I assume some public comment. And we've got to discuss the next public forum. Let's get some reaction from Eleanor. We do have the letter from the ACLU, which part of which I think was already covered in prior material we got from Eleanor. And then we'll take some public comment, talk about the next public forum. If we still have time, we can go back and talk a little bit more. But obviously, the next meeting, we'll have the resident discussion related to, personal discussion related to Karen's memo, and then we'll go right back into initiative and referendum. And those would be, I think, the only thing on our agenda, which is charter ones. Eleanor?
Okay, the ACLU's letter makes allegations of constitutionality. It's not really flushed out. There's really no argument in there. There's no case law with respect to the constitutional issues. And those issues have been addressed in my memo to you of August 5th of 2014. I think that...
Which is in your August 12th packet.
Right.
Date August
I
5th.
think the main argument that's being made by the ACLU is that the charter must follow the state code provision of 362.4 for petition requirements. And I think the easiest way to show you why I disagree with that is just to... So I guess my basic conclusion is there's nothing in state law that requires you to set a certain petition requirement for initiative and referendum. And the reason for that is, I just want you to get this. If you look at 362.4, this is the petition requirement that the ACLU is arguing you must apply, because if you don't, you're acting inconsistently with the state code, and there's preemption. But if you read the first sentence, if the petition of the voters is authorized by the city code, the petition is valid, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, now turn the page over and look at 362.2 and see how city code is defined. City code means the city code of Iowa. It's not the city code of Iowa City. And if you look up at 362.1, it further says what the city code of Iowa is, and its chapters, etc., of the state code. So what 362.4 is saying is if a petition of the voters is authorized by state law, the petition is valid if you have so many signatures. Initiative and referendum petition is not authorized by the state code. It's authorized by the city charter. I think that's actually quite clear. So you could do, I mean, you're free to do what you want with the petition requirement, but I don't think state law can follow that petition.
All right.
Thank you.
So with that brief description and then the discussion we've had about what will be on our agenda next week. Are we all right? Moving on. Anything else someone wanted to get to right now? Otherwise, I was going to take some public comment. Okay. Happy to have some public comment.
Well, there are two things.
Caroline, could you
Come
come
a
up
little
here?
closer so we can get you on.
I'm sorry, I can't.
There are two things that bother me about this. The first is the change of citizen to resident. Now, I understand that your intention here is good. But, you know, in the initiative and referendum, when you're talking about electors and eligible people, who is an eligible elector? An eligible elector is a citizen who is eligible to register. That means he has to be a citizen of the United States to do that. And I think it's contradictory to try to use resident in place of citizen. I'd like to remind you of a small story where somebody was objecting to the presence of armed police in the council chamber. And the police chief at the time said, well, I am a police officer first and a citizen second. And this was very offensive to people who heard it, because people should be a citizen first if you're going to be in a participatory democracy. That's what this is. So I think that you're a little too fast in changing from citizen to resident. The second thing is that I am appalled, frankly, by your worry about the citizens filing petitions and asking for votes on things. This is a participatory democracy. You urge people to vote. You urge people to participate. And then you turn around and you make it as difficult as possible for people to do this. And in reply to Eleanor's assertions about the ACLU letter, it's interesting to me to hear that there's a section of our charter that ignores state law. This implies that we can do other things under this home rule that ignores state law. So maybe we can start by passing a pesticide ordinance under this or something, and abandon the idea that you can't under the Code of Iowa do these things. That's forbidden under the Code of Iowa, as an example. And according to this, you know, you can do whatever you want under this infernal initiative and referendum thing. You can restrict people as much as you want. You don't want people to bring issues to a vote. I find that exceedingly offensive. I think it should be made easier, because if anybody can get interest going in participating in our city government, it's because they are allowed to sign a petition which is not examined with a microscope to make sure that everybody is registered as a voter. And then we turn around and use resident as though anybody is important. It's contradictory. It's foolish. It makes the whole thing look ludicrous. That's my sense.
Caroline, where in the initiative and referendum section of the charter is the word citizen?
It's nowhere, but the implication that I have when I think about city government is that this is a government of the people. People who are citizens, who are going to vote and who are going to participate. And if you're not, you can't. And that's unfortunate, and I hope that you get your citizenship so that you can participate. But this is something that governs how the voters of this community govern the city. Basic.
But there are things in this charter that aren't just about voting. It's about how people are treated and services and accessibility.
Well, that's fine to change it there, but to use resident in the preamble, and then, you know, I haven't been here for all the discussion about this, and I'm not really interested in getting into it, because what I'm interested in is the initiative and referendum, because I have participated in these petition drives, and it's a very, very onerous job that anybody has to do this. It's not undertaken lightly. You're not going to have a lot of frivolous petitions, filed simply because we don't have to use qualified, eligible qualified registration for signers.
I don't, it seems to me having a resident be able to sign the petition
No.
rather than just to say, well, listen, to me, makes it easier to meet the number.
Well, that would be great, but that's what you
It
change
still
it
has to
to.
be.
Well, that's what the proposal is.
No,
is to make
no.
it-
No,
No,
hang
it
on,
isn't.
hang on. First of all, we need to have, we got one more question, some comment. Remember, an elector is not going to be any individual. An elector is separately defined as a person who is eligible to register to vote. An elector, so that doesn't change to the word citizenship. The definition of eligible elector can still be, no matter what we do with qualified electors, will still be a person eligible to register to vote. So, let's not get too far through about what we're actually proposing.
And I would like to just quickly say that eligible elector, covers it. I mean, that means, that if you are eligible, you're not a felon, and you're of age, and you live here, you're a resident of the United States, you can register to vote. Or a U.S. citizen. Or a citizen of the United States, you can register to vote.
Right.
And that's that's plenty of restriction, right there. We don't need to have you be actually registered.
You have,
I agree with everything Caroline said.
you just speak up, or, I know you've got a handful, but you just speak up so we can get it out of date.
I agree with everything Caroline said. Having to collect the 2,500 signatures is a lot, which is also more than what the state requires for collecting signatures. I think it's 10% that the Iowa code says. People don't just, I want to do this and I'm going to start a petition. And I mean, it's a lot of hard work. People take it seriously. You're not going to have, like Caroline said, you're not going to have frivolous petitions thrown at the city council. And there's just too many restrictions right now that limit participation in city government, and that's unfortunate. I have children, and I'm going to have to collect signatures in the future, and there's just a few people doing a lot of hard work for the collective city, for all of the citizens. I am blessed that I don't have to work. I can stay home with the kids. But there's a lot of people that would like to see change in their city government, but have to go to work 9 to 5 or even 12 hours a day and don't have time to collect signatures or do this kind of work. But they have time to sign a petition. They have time to go and vote. But so when you have something like this, like a petition, for example, the red light cameras, there's really only a few people, and Miriam Carr can testify that when petitions come in, it's not, 20, 30, 40 people signing affidavits to submit signatures. It's probably maybe a dozen at the most. I mean, the people that make the major changes are just a few people. So to ask these few people to collect this huge amount of signatures, first of all, and then to scrutinize them, I mean, we had to collect 4,300 signatures to make that 2,500. So if we could at least bring it down, eliminate the qualified elector requirement and just have eligible electors sign, that would be fantastic. Again, we're not going to get frivolous stuff on the ballot. And if we do, and voters see that it's frivolous or ridiculous, they'll vote it down. If they see there's no merit, it'll be voted down. So I don't know what the city is afraid of as far as, allowing more people to participate in the system. But yeah.
Sorry, what's your name?
Martha Hample.
Okay. One more discussion, initiative, referendum. Which will be December